Hello, so I'm here today thanks to Dorks Music with the next in this series of videos with some practice tips for sax players, and today I'm going to be talking about some alternative fingerings on the saxophone. So hopefully you'll all be familiar with the normal fingerings on the saxophone for the normal range of the instrument, but today I'm going to go through some of the alternatives that are available. I'm going to start off with some of the more common ones that you may well have come across before, and then I'm going to go on to some of the more advanced ones. So the first fingering on the saxophone to be aware of is for the B flat, and there are two main fingerings that we use for B flat. The first one uses what's called the bis key, and that's the key. If you look on your saxophone where you've got the B, and then there's a little key just underneath it, and that's called the bis key, or the bis B flat. Sometimes people call that the button B flat. And the way we play B flat using that is we take our finger, we play the B, and we slide down, so we're covering both of those keys, and then that gives us a B flat. And that's the fingering I'd use for B flat anytime you're playing a piece of music that's in a key with B flats in the key signature. Because what you find is once you've moved your finger onto that key, you can actually leave it there for all the other notes, and it doesn't affect any of them. It only turns the B into a B flat and keeps all the others the same. So for example, if I play an F major scale, you see, nice and easy with that bis B flat. Now the other way of playing a B flat on the saxophone is with the side B flat key. Now there is a whole system for naming all of the keys on the saxophone. There's a French naming system, and in that system this next key is called TA, but often you'll just hear it referred to as the side B flat key. And on your sax you see you've got a series of 3 side keys here, and it's this bottom one here is TA, or the side B flat key. And what we can do to play a B flat with that is we play an A, which is with the 2 fingers there, and then we just add that one. So you get. And when that's really useful is whenever you've got to go kind of from a B flat to a B, you can do that. And it means you don't have to slide with that one. So you tend to use that if you're in a piece that's got A sharps or has lots of chromatic movement. And as a very general rule, a lot of people think of that this key fingering as a B flat and the other side key fingering as an A sharp. So that's the first alternative fingering to be aware of. The next one I'm going to show you is an alternative for the F sharp. So hopefully you all know that F sharp is your left hand fingers and the middle finger on the right hand. But there is another way of playing that, which is using the auxiliary F sharp key, which is this one here. On some saxophones it looks a bit different, it doesn't always have a pearl, but that's the key there, and we play that one with our 4th finger usually. And all you do to play an F sharp using that is you play your normal F and then add that onto it. And that's really useful if you've ever got a trill from an F to an F sharp, or if you're going chromatically, say F, F sharp, G. So if you're going, or if you're going, and it means you're not having to flick the fingers over there. And that's actually the fingering I was using in the passage at the start of the video. That, yeah, that last bit, that means I don't have to flick the fingers over like that. So that's another really useful key to know about. Next up, I'm going to show you some alternative fingerings at the top of the saxophone. So hopefully you're all familiar with the palm keys, these ones on the side here, which take us up to right up to the top of the saxophone. So you've got the first one there is the D palm key, next one's the D sharp palm key. Then on the right hand here, this top one here is the E key, that's the playing the top E, and the final one there is the F palm key. Now, to get the highest note on the sax, almost all saxes have this key, but not all of them, is the top F sharp key, which is this one here. So it's right next to that auxiliary F sharp that we were using earlier. And to play a top F sharp, you just play a top F and add that one. So going up, normally using the palm keys, you go. But there is an alternative way of doing that, which is to use the front F key. Now that's the one here on my sax. You see this kind of funny shaped key. It's sometimes referred to as a spatula key. It's not that shape on all saxophones. Some saxophones have an extra pearl there, but it does exactly the same function. And the reason this is really useful is to play a top F, you can do it by playing a C as normal, so that middle finger in the octave key, and then you just add that key there, and it puts it up to an F. And if you were, for example, playing an F major arpeggio, going F, A, C, and then the top F, it's quite nice to just be able to add that key rather than having to go to the palm keys. So you get this. And from that front F, you can add the top F sharp key to go up to your top F sharp. So, and for people with the sax without a top F sharp key, this is probably only people playing on vintage saxophones. What you can do is if you do the front F, if you add your side B flat key that we saw earlier, that one will also turn that note into an F sharp. So you get, and that's how you used to have to play a top F sharp before manufacturers started putting F sharp keys on saxophones. So we've done that top F, shown how it can go to an F sharp. You can also, from that front F fingering, add one more finger, that G key, and that goes from the top F down to an E. So you get. So that's just a few alternatives at the top of the sax. I'm going to show you one more alternative fingering that's useful like this, and then we'll do some more for kind of intonation things. So the next one I'm going to show you is the side C key. And we used the side B flat key here earlier. The one above it here is called the side C key, or TC on the French naming system. And the way that one works is if you play your normal B and then add that key, it just pushes it up to a C. And that's really useful if you have to trill from a B to a C, because it's almost impossible to trill kind of flicking those fingers. Or if you do a B and just flick that, it's nice and easy. You get. So you can see you can do that much faster than you'd be able to flick between the fingers. Now that we've done kind of all those basic alternative fingerings, I'm going to show you some slightly more complicated ones, more advanced ones. And the first ones I'm going to show you are for the tuning of the C sharps on the saxophone. So a lot of saxophones, you find the C sharps aren't particularly in tune with themselves. The C sharp with no fingers at all tends to be flat on most saxes. The C sharp at the top with the octave key tends to be sharp on most saxophones. I'll just show you on mine how they sound if I don't adjust at all. I go. So you can hear that interval is quite a lot wider than an octave at the moment. The top one's quite sharp compared with the lower one. So a really good fingering for the lower one is if you press the G key and the octave key together. That slightly sharpens that C sharp. And you might wonder why on earth that fingering would work. The G key with the octave key seems a bit strange. But what happens on the sax, you might have noticed, when you press the octave key, it either opens this key here on the crook, or it opens the one around the side there. And basically, if the notes from C down to A, it'll open the top one, and for the notes G and lower, it'll open the bottom one. So what we're doing on the C sharp is we're adding the G key and pressing that, which is tricking the saxophone into opening the wrong octave key. And what that does is rather than making the note go up the octave, it just vents it slightly and makes it a little bit sharper. So you can hear, if I now play the C sharp and then add the G and the octave key, you'll hear the pitch go up slightly. So you hear it just pulls the pitch up for me a little bit. That's also a really nice fingering if you're either playing a passage where you're coming down from some higher notes, say you're playing a D and then had a C sharp, because it means you can leave the octave key on, which makes it a little bit smoother. So I could play, for example, and you can see when I go to the C sharp, I can leave that octave key on, which is that little bit smoother. So now we've fixed the tuning on that C sharp in the middle, we can look at the C sharp in the higher octave, which is the one that's usually sharp. And a great way to flatten this is by using the right hand keys. If you press those down, it just flattens the sound slightly. It's worth experimenting on your sax to see which one or which combination works best, because it's different on all of them. But on mine, I find adding the top 2 fingers is the best way of bringing the pitch down on my C sharp. So I'll just play it normally, then add those. So yeah. So you hear it has kind of quite a pronounced flattening effect on those notes. So now I'll just play you my original C sharp octave again, and then I'll play it to you with the adjustments using those fingerings. So you see that's with no adjustments. Now with the adjustments I get. And you hear it's a much truer octave when I've done those adjustments. So I've got one final set of alternative fingerings I'm going to show you for today. And these are ones for if you want to cross the octaves, so go up into the higher octave, but you're playing really quiet and you want a really kind of gentle, subtle sound. Because you might have, for example, a passage where you've been playing, I don't know, say a B, a C sharp and then a D, but it's got a diminuendo on it. And when you cross over the octave to the D, there'll always be a slight bump in the sound. So you get. And the D is always going to stick out slightly. But another way of playing that D is to use the E flat palm key. So that's the second one up here. If you just play that on its own, it'll actually give you a D, which is quite a nice soft sounding D. So. And now if I did my B, C sharp, D, yeah. And you see it's a much softer sound, and I could diminuendo away to nothing on that note. So that takes us up to a D without having to use the octave key. We can go even higher though. If you use just this F palm key, that'll give you a D sharp, so yeah. So now if I go chromatically through my C sharp, you get. And I can in fact even go one note higher than that, all the way up to an E. And the way I would do that is I keep this F palm key on, and then on my right hand, I add the E key here, and I also add my top F sharp key that we saw earlier. So yeah. So now if we work up chromatically from the C sharp, yeah. And you can see how you can get a nice soft, gentle sound on those, which is a little bit smoother than if I'd crossed the octave and gone. So you're not going to want to use those alternative fingerings all the time, but they're really useful to know about for certain occasions if you've got a kind of really quiet passage going up onto those notes. So hopefully that's given you lots of things to think about and to try out with all these alternative fingerings, and it will give you just those extra options for whenever you've got tricky passages and you're looking for some easier ways around the fingerings.